Okay, so the third round begins with me going against Taikomu, a Twitch streamer. And yeah, so he's using Shadow Paladins from the looks of things, which is a different approach. Both of the people I went through before this went for Master Blaster, but it looks like Taikomu, there we go, has gone with Shadow Paladin. So that's an interesting different approach. Shadow Paladin are a very, very good deck right now. Like an incredibly good deck if you know what you're doing. The biggest problem is it's one of the most expensive decks, I'd say, to build right now. And it just isn't quite as good as Magical Blaster. Nothing is. And so, because of that, I feel like it slipped under the radar a little bit. Like, yeah, it's a great deck and a lot of people use it, but I haven't ran into quite as many as I was expecting to. And that's interesting. So, yeah, so first turn, sending out vanilla grade 1 unit, sending out P-Knight in the back, using Neonectar still, because, well, yeah, nothing's changed. And once again, trying to pull off the technique of using my grade 1 Squire to get out a grade 2 Gene, which allows me to get that guaranteed intercept way earlier on in the game than I usually should be able to. This is basically as perfect a first turn as you can get for a Neonectar player. Getting that combination of having 2 attacks, one of them being your Squire, is as perfect as it gets for a Neonectar player. That's what you want to be aiming for, doing pretty much every game. You won't be able to do it every single time, but getting it, you know, most of the time is definitely what you want to be doing. So he's sending out Blast Dark, and because he's sending out in the Vanguard, he can counterblast 2 to get rid of one of my units. But he's deciding not to, so I guess he's saving it for later, which makes sense. So he's sending out the main. The main is a really interesting unit because it has almost no power, but allows you to draw a card, and that will be why he decided not to use Blast Dark's ability, because he is using the mains instead. So he is able to draw some more, which is good for him. And the main is a really interesting card because it, yeah, only has 5,000 power, which is usually pretty awful. And wow, he's actually comboing it by sending out a second Nemain in the back row. That's actually a really clever strategy. Because the problem with Nemain is that, yeah, she only has 5k power, but she's still an incredibly good unit because of that ability and because she's still an intercept. See, a grade 2 doesn't need that much power to still be a valuable intercept, because yes, I'm pretty much guaranteed to be able to beat her no problem, but she's still wasting one of my attacks, which is the job of an intercept. So that's actually very clever. So sending out a Squire again, and I'm sending out a grade 2 unit there. And I'm deciding to keep hold of everything else in my hand because I don't really need to send those out. And I think I attack the main with my Vanguard, if I'm correct. Yeah. And the reason I'm doing this is so I can get Squire's attack in with the Vanguard. As you know by now, Squire's attack only works when he successfully hits the Vanguard. So by doing that, I'm able to use his effect, which allows me to get another grade 2 out on the field. See, what makes this effect so great is you don't need to draw any grade 2s in your hand to actually have some on the field, which is great. You know, of course you can still get grade locked because it only calls a grade 2 rather than writing it, but it's still a really good option to have. So he's sending out Phantom Blaster Dragon, which isn't good for me because, well, it's a very good grade 3. And he's got a pretty big hand, which if you're using that card, you need a big hand because his ability revolves around retiring quite a lot of your own units. So he's still got a main out, which is interesting. He must be running quite a lot of copies of it. I'm assuming he's running a full playset then. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't know whether or not Nemain was a card worth playing a full playset of or not. And I'm assuming right now he's just kind of looking at his cards, weighing up his options, so on and so forth. You'll notice here that the tournament rules stated that the matches don't have time limits or anything. Usually when you make a fight in Vanguard 0, you can choose whether you want the room to have a time limit or not. And it's looking... I remember this now, yep. He had some connection issues. I don't know what the deal was, but he had some connection issues. It wasn't anything too serious because he would come back again every few seconds or so, and it didn't interrupt the outcome of the games or anything, I don't think. But yes, he's back again. He's placing down another grade 2, and he's attacking me. Pretty simple stuff. So the problem with this game immediately is that my hand isn't all that great. I've got a grade 2 and a grade 1. They don't give me all too many options. I'm genuinely close, I guess, to getting, or likely to getting grade locked, which you do not want to get grade locked in a tournament. Not being able to ride another unit on my next turn is kind of a problem, and indeed a problem that happens. So yeah, not great. Not being able to ride a grade 3 when my opponent already has one is bad. Very, very bad. And I checked my drop zone there because I wanted to see if I had any worthwhile triggers in there, because if so, I would have used P-Knight and replaced him with the grade 1 vanilla. But it wasn't really worth it, so I ended up not using P-Knight, instead placing the vanilla somewhere else. So I managed to draw a card there, and it gave me a grade 1. So grade lock, I shall remain. Which isn't good, because usually if you're grade locked and can't get a grade 3, then at the very least that means you should be able to draw them as triggers, right? Or at least get them as triggers. But I'm not doing all too great a job of doing that either. So I'm pretty sure this is him sending out Phantom Blaster Overlord, so basically I'm not in a great position right now. I am grade locked and he has cross-ridden. So, and look at my triggers there. Yeah, see, I remember that. I was like, I'm just going to keep my trigger info open just to really show you how bad of a position I'm in right now, because I hate it. I really, really, really hate to just go, well, you know, I just didn't pull any triggers. That's why I lost. Because I feel like that's kind of deflecting the blame. You know, that's a way of me not actually taking or accepting the responsibility of a loss. I lost because I just didn't play as well as my opponent. But at the same time, the triggers are luck-based, and as you saw there, I just wasn't pulling them. You know, I remained grade locked for a turn, and I couldn't pull any triggers. That's a pretty deadly combo. And I'm still sitting here right now, not quite sure of how I could have avoided that. You know? So, I mean, at least I got a perfect guard in my hand. But at the same time, it's not going to buy me any time. I don't even have any intercepts anymore, most likely just because I've sort of burnt through all my grade 2 units. You know, because I was grade locked for so long, so I just had to keep putting down grade 2 units. And, well, now that's kind of messing me up here, because now I don't have any intercepts left to play with. And to rub salt in the wound, once again, my opponent gets a heal trigger. And, yeah, this is kind of a heartbreaking game here. This is not good. This is the moment in the tournament where kind of a sort of depression, maybe depression's a bit of a hard word, but sort of a resignation sort of started to kick in, because I admitted all the way on the top before the tournament even started in my kind of game plan and strategy video that I wasn't necessarily expecting to get any wins, or at least many, but I wanted to get at least a few, and I wanted to prove that Neo Nectar were a good and worthwhile deck to use. And that at least I was going to have a lot of fun. And I did have fun, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I regretted joining the tournament. Far from it. It was a great experience. But it was at this point where I was just kind of having a bit of a rough go at it. And kind of regretting my deck choice. I remember the mod for my Discord server, Tisbury, at one point mentioned to me that maybe I should have just ran my Shadow Paladin deck anyway, even if it was incomplete, because an incomplete Shadow Paladin would have at least been better than a brand new deck I hadn't had any experience with. And maybe she's right, you know, maybe that is what the problem is. Because I don't know what the problem is. Maybe it was just that I didn't have any experience with Neonectar. Because like I said previously, Ride My Avatar, he ran Neonectar and he didn't seem to have any problems with it himself. So I don't know. And that's not me deflecting the blame, or trying to be like, you know, this deck sucks or my luck sucks or this or that. It's more just me being confused and trying to really think of what it was I want to do next. Now, of course, you can run your decks in any order you want, and even if you lose with a deck, you can switch to your other deck prematurely as long as you switch back to the other deck afterwards. So, you know, why not just make it so that I go with Darker Regulars first, then Neonectar second? And that would that would definitely improve my win-loss ratio, because the way this tournament works, the more card fight wins you get, the better. So even if you lose 2-1, so in the best of 3 rounds, your opponent gets 2 wins and you get 1 win, you may lose the round, but that's still a better loss than losing 2-0 like I have been so far. And that counts towards your score and makes you more likely to get into the top 8. So maybe I should have gone for my Darker Regulars first rather than my Neonectar, but at the same time, I'm stubborn. I thought to myself, I was like, no, I'm not working around this. I'm working through it. I want to get better at my Neonectars, even if it does cost me more games. So this was kind of a turning point for me, as you'll sort of see. This was me kind of trying to weigh up my options and see what it is I wanted to do. So this is an Oracle Think Tank user now. It's still Taikomu, by the way. He's using Oracle Think Tank. At this point, I thought that he might have been using Amaterasu, which I was confused by. I was like, what? Amaterasu? This season? Okay. But it did actually turn out to be Oracle Think Tank Witches, which isn't great for me because, I mean, let's be real, pretty much every matchup I've said something along those lines, but it really isn't great for me because I haven't had much time to practice against them. So now I'm using a deck that I haven't had much time to practice with, and now I'm going against the deck I haven't had much time to go against. At least in Magical Blaster, I've seen enough of that deck to know how it works inside and out. And so, you know, even if I'm losing, I at least know why I'm losing. Oracle Think Tank Witches, like Coco, I haven't really seen much in action. Not very much, especially not in ranked play. So this is kind of a blind spot for me. But I decide, you know what, I'm just going to play aggressive. Neonectar is a clan that is very defensive. And so I've been trying to kind of figure out whether or not I want to lean into the defensiveness and just hope that I can defend for long enough that the opponent loses and just kind of expends all their resources, or whether I should just keep pushing forward and acting as aggressively as possible and hoping that the built-in mechanics of Neonectar are enough to defend me on their own. So this is a card fight where I very much was just like, alright then, let's just kind of forget that this is even a defensive deck and just push forward and really try and get as many hits in as possible, which is why Taikomu is currently at 3 damage here. I'm still, you know, acting somewhat defensively, putting down some intercepts and everything like that, but that's only if it doesn't get in the way of me being able to attack. So we're doing pretty alright. So I saw Silent on my in the drive check there, which definitely confirmed my suspicions that they'd be running it, because let's be real, why run Oracle Think Tank if you're not gonna have Silent Tom? So now I know that he definitely has at least 1 copy in his deck, most likely a playset, let's be real. And I send out Maiden of Trailing Rose. So yeah, they do actually post the deck lists of everyone in the tournament. during the first round, I think, but I never get the time to check them out because I'm always so focused on making sure I'm actually making it through the tournament and everything. So there's that. I used my free time between rounds to get myself a bunch of tea, basically, which, yeah, maybe I should have studied deck lists. That may have actually done me better, but hey, you know what? We're doing this my way. And if we're losing, then we're losing my way. So I get a fabled heal trigger, a very rare thing for this tournament in this deck. Or at the very least, rare for it to be successful anyway. And I'm using Maiden Trailing Rose, and they're going to get a stand trigger. And do I use Persona Blast here? No, I decided not to, because I'm saving it for next turn. And as you can see, as I mentioned, going very offensive. I'm just going directly for the attack on the Vanguard, and they're going to get a second stand trigger in a row, which is kind of ridiculous. And I do a very obvious and blatant misplay there and accidentally attack the Vanguard without having enough power. I don't have an excuse for that, basically. Like, it's almost like I knew that it wouldn't go through, but I just couldn't control it. I guess it was just because I was so hell-bent on getting damage done on the Vanguard at any cost. So, yeah. So, I do have an Intercept, and I do have Maiden's Persona Blast, and I'm doing pretty well in terms of damage. So, right now, I'm just thinking, you know, yeah, they're going to get some attacks in and everything, but doesn't matter, basically. It doesn't matter. I can survive this turn no matter what happens. So, there's that. I get a heal trigger that I can't use. She gets a stand. She seems to be running a lot of stands. And the reason I keep alternating between pronouns like that, where I go she, he, is because sometimes my brain is thinking of Taikomu, the guy actually playing, and then other times I'm thinking of Misaki, the character playing. So that's why I always get confused and switch between pronouns like that. Yeah, I don't know. That's just something I've always had a problem with this game. I just don't know whether I'm talking about the fictional character or whether I'm talking about the actual person playing. I don't know if anyone else has that problem or if it's just me. So, they use the Perfect Guard, I attack anyway, I get a stand trigger, and I use it, basically. And I get another trigger, and this is what a turn looks like where you actually get the setup and triggers you need, because basically I'm getting a lot of attacks through and burning up all of their Perfect Guards. But because I got that stand trigger from earlier, hey look, stand triggers are actually useful. The trigger I'm least experienced with and find most difficult to pull off is the one that I actually have some luck with, and we get our first win of the tournament. And at this point, like, usually people would celebrate one win like that as like a, cool, I won. But for me, that was a fist pump moment. That was like a, yo, I just won. And that means we're finally going to see Dark Irregulars in action here. So we're just getting ready for the next match here, and we're going to be going in a second. So yeah, really fun. So we're going to be going against basically the same deck again, because it's a 2-deck system, so we've already seen both of his decks. So we're going to be going against the same Oracle Think Tank deck again. We just need to beat it again, which I felt pretty confident about. I was like, well, I'm using a deck I'm more experienced with and is probably better, let's be real. And I've already beaten this deck, so I'm feeling pretty confident right now. At the very least, this was the most confident I had ever felt during this tournament, which is kind of a problem. See, confidence is cool. It's a good thing to have. You want to be confident. But if you get too confident, you start to underthink your moves. And immediately, off to a bad start, we have to ride our Perfect Guard. So, Taikomu gets disconnected again. Don't know what the deal with that is, but it's not too big a deal. I'm not, you know, I've had technical difficulties playing Vanguard 0 in the past too, so I totally understand. And now it's his turn to go. So yeah, riding the Perfect Guard, not a great idea, you know, but I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do. It's not the end of the world at the very least, you know. I have definitely won games in the past where I've ridden a Perfect Guard, you know. Like, that's the thing, everyone always, you know, preferably, yes, you want to keep your Perfect Guards in your hand and use them if you need to. But there are a lot of situations where calling or riding a Perfect Guard is something you just kind of have to do, or will help you win. You know, I'm pretty lenient when it comes to calling a Perfect Guard if I think I wouldn't survive otherwise. If I'm like, okay, if I let them have another turn here, then they will win. There's no way I'm surviving another turn. So I call out a Perfect Guard to boost one of my units, and that ends up working out for me. So I end up sending Grade 2 Ammon onto the field and 2 Seekers. And I have a Succubus as well, which allows me to Soul Charge. Basically, my plan is to tank some hits and use those hits against my enemy by using Gwyn and Ammon to nuke their field, basically. Now, it's not a great matchup against Oracle Think Tank, because, well, yeah, you have to use up your own units and burn them to use Ammon's units. You have to, Ammon has to absorb a Rare Guard into his soul in order to actually get rid of one of your opponent's Rare Guards. So if you're going against someone who has significantly better draw power than you, then you'll be using up all your units to activate Ammon's effect, to which end they're just gonna replace those units with their massive hand. So even though I was feeling confident in the moment, looking back on this was actually a very, very bad matchup that I should have been more careful of. And that's something that I will definitely admit, right? That's something that I will definitely take the blame for. But nonetheless, I send out Ammon anyway. Yeah. Then I send out Gwyn, even though I can't use his ability. I don't like sending out Gwyn if I can't use his ability, but at this point, I kind of have to just get some attacks done and through. I'm in a pretty favorable situation here right now because, you know, they just don't have a hand and they just damage check the Perfect Guard. So, you know, I'm not doing too bad here. Especially considering that in the previous game, the one I just won, they basically had all their Perfect Guards in their hand. They had at least 3 of them in there that I just had to keep attacking to get through. And so if they damage check one, then that's one they're not going to have. So that's good. So now it goes over to their turn, and I'm pretty sure this is the one where they just start flooding the field with their hand. Send out Coco, which we didn't see previously. In the previous game, we didn't see Coco at all. So immediately already doing better. And let's see what it is they're going to be doing. So like I said, this isn't the deck I'm most familiar with in the world. I know that you basically get rid of your soul in order to activate abilities, which is a really interesting idea. It's a cool idea for a deck, because usually with most decks you want to be trying to build up as beefy a soul as possible. So having a deck that benefits from the opposite is a really cool idea, but at the same time, in terms of playstyle, it's not all that different really. You know, like the difference between building up a soul and kind of getting rid of your soul, functionally basically the same thing, you know. It's just worded differently. So once again, some more connection issues on Taikomu's side. I did start to get worried that it was like a problem with me, but it wasn't. My internet connection was fine for the entire tournament. So, but that doesn't matter because he managed to connect again pretty quickly anyway. He's using Coco. There's Coco and there's Coco, both spelt 2 different ways. That's good. Got an SP of it too, so that looks cool. But yeah, this is the time where he flooded out his field, and that's the thing with Oracle Think Tank. He's flooded out his field and has a full field, every single spot covered, and he still has a 4-card hand. That's the power of Oracle Think Tank right there. And that's the problem with Ammon, because as I mentioned, if I wanted to use Ammon, then I would have to burn my own units in order to get rid of his. But he has 4 cards in his hand, whereas I don't really have much at all. So if I was to burn all my units to get rid of his, then he would just replace them immediately, whereas I can't afford to replace them. I decided to use it anyway, just because I'm like, I think I can get away with using it once. I think I might use it again as well, actually, because I'm like, you know what, I don't need a back row. No, actually I don't. Maybe that's next time I do. Again, my memory's a bit fuzzy. When you're taking part in a tournament like this, kind of all of your memories can sort of blur together. Which is why it's kind of fun to rewatch these card fights as I'm recording this. So I managed to pull a draw trigger, which is good. You know, you want to be running 9 draw with an Amon deck because, as I mentioned, you need to have as big a hand as possible so that you can afford to burn those units so that you can use Amon's ability. So there is that. So yeah, so I'm running Steel Vampire on my deck, which is something I mentioned a couple times before. Basically, that was my big plan against Managed Blaster decks. My big plan against Managed Blaster decks was I was going to use Steel Vampire's ability on Managed Blaster to undo his crit. So that's why I'm running that. But usually whenever I'm running against a deck that isn't Managed Blaster, I just go with Amon and try and nuke their field. Sometimes I'll go with Edel Rose or Death Anchor, but it depends. It's very situational. Death Anchor I don't tend to have all too much luck with. One time I managed to, I think it was a couple times actually, I managed to deck myself out with Death Anchor because basically Death Anchor, when you are at 5 damage, you can put your damage zone in its entirety into Death Anchor's soul, and then at the end of the turn, you take the top 5 cards in your deck and put them in your damage zone. So basically, you're replacing your damage zone with your deck, but if you have less than 5 cards, then, well, yeah, that's kind of a problem. But yeah, and the problem with Death Anchor is you're doing that to get an extra crit, but most times if you're in that kind of position, they're just going to perfect guard it anyway. It has been successful in the past, but not many times. Amon is definitely my favorite of the grade 3 units. Now the problem with Amon is that he will prioritize your opponent's back row, which is actually pretty good. You know, I'd actually kind of rather, if it chooses randomly, I'd rather it prefer the back row, because of course the front row you can attack, whereas you have to rely on effects to get rid of the back row. So I'm glad it does prioritize that, but you know, of course, Amon would be a lot better if you could just straight up choose. Now, I do still think it might be a little better than the TCG, where, if I'm correct, in the TCG, your opponent chooses which unit Amon uses. So, I would still say it's better than that, but basically it means that if you are going after a specific unit to use Amon's ability with, you basically better be willing to use his ability multiple times, because there's a pattern to it, basically. There's definitely certain units it prioritizes over others, and it will usually prioritize the least favorable unit first. So it's not going to get the intercept first time, basically, is the thing. Why it doesn't just work like the TCG, where your opponent chooses, I don't know. I guess to speed up the game, but I don't really think it would slow down the game that much. I don't know. That's just my mind wandering at that point. So I'm still holding on to my Perfect Guard. I think at this point I was planning on, if I survived a turn longer, placing it down and using it for Amon's ability. Because, honestly, Dark Irregular is a powerful enough deck in terms of just raw damage power that you don't need to rely on boosting that much. For example, Amon gets more power the more is in his soul. And so usually, if you get Amon out and use his ability once or twice, you basically never ever have to boost with him again. But they send out that Silent Tom, I still have my Perfect Guard in my hand. You can kind of figure out where this is going, right? So they attack my Rare Guard, and luckily I still have another turn left to hang in, but I have no field. Ironically, I have just been Dark Irregular by an Oracle Think Tank user. So I send that out. I think I do actually end up using... Nope, I don't. Okay, yeah, no, my plan was to get a trigger and use that trigger on my Perfect Guard so that I could get an attack on the Vanguard. If that worked, I would have won. Can you guess what my opponent had in their hand? I bet you can't guess. But you know, kind of a smart move. definitely a smart move. I think that's basically the best play I could have made in that situation at the very least. And they've got a turn now, and basically I have no intercepts, I have no perfect guards. My chances of pulling a heal trigger are slim. I think you can kind of guess what happens next. So, you know, this round was definitely the best one so far in that I got a win, but as you can probably see, this is a pretty catastrophic tournament for me just in terms of my plays. I just can't get a win for the life of me. But hey, you know, join me next time in the next round to see if we fare any better, hey. See you then. Make sure to subscribe if you like this stuff, and I'll see ya.